So we're going to see routing. I will give you a high-level overview of what routing is, how to think about routing, and we're going to build like a very simple, let's say, Pullman's router, so that we can move on to the proper way of dealing with it, which is through some library. So what is routing? Let me first start with the diagram because it's important. So normally when we build applications using like HTML, let's forget about React and JavaScript. What we do is we have a browser, and then we access some URL, and we say, I don't know, in-tech-gration.io contact HTML. We hit like a URL, and what happens is that, and we hit that by pressing some button. So we have some buttons, some navigation, right? And we click on one of these buttons, and then we get this page loaded and see like the contents. And then when we hit another button, we go to another page. So what happens when we go from, let's say, integration.io to the contact page? We click, we are in the initial page, which is most of the times index.html. And then we click and we go to another page. So initially, when we load the page, we go to a web server, lousy letters, and that is found on this domain, on this address, integration.io. And then when we're asking for a page, the web server looks into the hard drive or the disk drive and tries to find a page called index.html, a file. And it finds this file, and it sends this back to the browser, which displays this and shows the content. Now, if I click on a link, I will instruct the browser to go and find this resource. So it will go to this web server again, to the same web server, but this time it will look for a file called contact.html. So go here, look for contact.html, find it, and return it back and show it in, I don't know, some different content. Now, if I look for a file that doesn't exist, so if I mistype contact and I say contact, what do you think will happen when we go to the server? So it will go here. It will try to find the file. It will not find the file, and it will load the page, or it will dynamically create a page. So let's say in this case, there is a file called 404.html. So if the web server doesn't find the contact HTML, it will instead return the 404 page. And we will see something like the contents of the 404 HTML. Okay. So that's how like static content or very basic web serving thing works. Now, let's switch to React. Let's see how far I can go. So we are here. Okay. Now, instead of having static contents like contact HTML, index HTML, or an HTML file for every page, in React, we have just one page. If you open up the feed project, you will see just one HTML. There's no other HTML. Why do I do this? Oops. We will just get an index HTML, some JavaScript, and then we will get this index HTML loaded in the page. Then there is some JavaScript that's going to be running, and these two together will create a page that will look exactly like this. an index.html, and the content will be created directly through the JavaScript bundle that we get when we build the React app. So you will see the content, and all of this will be displayed or created dynamically, meaning there will be some JavaScript code that will be executed on the browser, and it will create the content right there when your browser loads and executes the JavaScript. The only file that we get with most React apps is a single file. That's why we're talking about single-page applications. So, okay, that's cool. We have just one file, things get simpler, but we need to supply our users with experience that they get when they go to a multi-page site, right? So we want to stick with React. We want to have single index HTML, and we want to have like our JSX doing everything, but we still want the users to click on a button and go to contact page, or gallery, or about us, and so forth. And in this case, because we're not actually going to be looking for HTML files, we will change these links to, let's say, just what is this here? To like integration, like the landing page, and then let's say this will be contact, and then so forth, like /gallery /about / and so forth. We're no longer asking for HTML files, so there's no need to put the .html. Just some nicely looking URLs here. Okay, so we have a challenge here. We have React, we have a single page, and we have to deal with this situation where the users can click different buttons, and then the URL changes to /contact, /gallery, and so forth. And of course, a different thing, a different page gets displayed on the page. So let's see how we can deal with this. The first challenge is that we need to have some buttons that will be changing the URL. So the first part in creating, let's say, our own router is to have some buttons changing the URL. That's just the first tiny challenge for our router. What we're going to build is called a router. This mechanism that allows the users to switch from one page to another, even though they're using a single page application. So one challenge is to have these buttons that they will update the URL. But the thing that we want is not this, when we update the URL, we don't want the browser to go and try to find these files on the server, right? Because first of all, there's no contact, no gallery on the page. And secondly, because we're using React to create our content. So we don't want these links to actually make a request to the server. So how can we do this? Let me go back to my application. Now, if, let me also open this application up, npm run dev. Let's see that it's working. Okay. So first I will create like 2 pages. So 2 links, button page A, and then button page B. I'm not going to use the anchor tags, even though I can, because I know that when I use the anchor tags and I put, I don't know, /contact or whatever, this will trigger a request from the browser. The browser will actually try to load the page from the domain called contact or whatever mistake I made, okay? So I'm just going to skip the anchor tag because it is not what I need for my React application. I will just create 2 simple buttons. And I want to have, let's say, a different content displayed on this page. So on the landing page, I will see hello world. On the page B, I want to see welcome. Let's say, let's make this contact and make this gallery. So gallery. So when I go to the gallery, I'm going to see just gallery. And when I go to the contact, I want to see the content for the content. Of course, not just the heading, but the whole lorem thing. Okay, I will just save you some time from Googling around, and I will show you the way that we can change the URL. Maybe I need to make this bigger, yeah. So I can change the URL without reloading the page. So this, I believe, is npm set update, update state, I forgot. Replace state, okay. There's a method, there's an API in the browser that's available as an API to JavaScript, that it's called replace state. I will keep the documentation for now, but you should read it. And I will go to, I will just pick the, where's the command example here? I will pick just this command, and I will use it in my application. You should not keep reading the doc, but I'm going to just run the command here. And now I want to, this command allows me to update the URL without reloading the page. So I need to provide a click handler on both of these buttons. So when I click the contact, I actually run this command. You will see what I will put here. So I will call this command that will update the URL without updating the. Okay. Now, you will go through the docs. I don't want to spend time on this. So basically, there's a history.replaceState API that accepts 3 arguments. For this one, I will keep the first 2 as they're not relevant. We will not use them. So I will place the first argument as null. It's totally fine. I just don't need anything to be passed as the first argument. So I will just pass null. I can keep the second argument as an empty string. That's what they mentioned in the documentation. The interesting part is the last argument. This is the URL, the path name that I need to actually pass. So this will be contact. And now I will do exactly the same thing on the gallery, but instead of changing to contact, I will change to /gallery. So let's see if that works. I put a click handler on these buttons. They use this native browser API called history, which has a method called replace state. And if I just bypass the first 2 arguments and I set the last one, we will probably see something changing in here. Let me make this smaller for now. And let me click contact and gallery. While I'm clicking, I want you to see that when I refresh the page, or when the browser refreshes the page, you will see this icon turn into an X while it's loading. So you will see this loading, and you will see the icon here, see the loading here, there's an icon here. So this is the reloading of the page where the browser tries to find something from the server. You will see that using the history replace state, there's no loading happen. So see how I go from one URL to another, and nothing gets changed. So I solved the first challenge for creating a router. I can now create my navigation menu, change to a different page, and then get to see like this a different URL. So that's the first thing we need to do in order to create a router. So the user can actually get this and load it on the page and see like the contact page and the gallery page and so forth. Of course, this will be like the home page. Okay. So I solved the first part. The second part is to actually create a different component for each different page. So for the home, I will create a component that returns a simple home. For the contact, a contact. And for the gallery, a gallery component. So the second thing that we need to do, since you're working with React, is for every single page, or at least maybe the main part that will be considered the page, you have to create a component. And you will not declare and define these functions in this page. In this file, you have to create a new folder called pages, and store this in a file called home page or contact page or contact JSX and so forth, and move all this code in there, export it, and import it here. So this should be placed in a pages folder and imported. Okay, so practice. Second step is to create a practice. Okay, and now the challenge is to display one of these pages according to the URL. So that's the second challenge. Like, is the URL slash or nothing? Load and show the home component. Is the URL contact? Show the contact component. Is the gallery? Show the gallery. So instead of just hard coding this here, I will have to find a way to conditionally render these components like this. So if this is the URL, then display this one. If this is gallery, then this one. If this is contact, if this is the path name. Okay, the part of the URL that's next to the domain. So we all know conditional rendering, right? We can use the ternary operator, we can use the logical length. Now we have to find a way to actually conditionally render these components depending on, some state, right? So we can think of the path name as a state in our application. We have a page in the home state. We transition through a button to the gallery state. We can transition to the home or back to the contact through another transition, through another state change. So if you think in state, it's easy for you to say, okay, why not use a state variable to set the current state or the current path name? So we can introduce a state. Use state. Let me import it here. So we should introduce a state to our app. Remember, if a system, if an app changes from one state to another, if it doesn't always display or do the same thing, you should think about introducing a state. In this case, the state is home gallery contact, like red, orange, green, right? And we need to find a way to switch from or transition from one state to another. In this case, we don't have the limitation of going from green to orange and then to red. We can go from anywhere in our path to any page in our application. We can go from contact to home or contact to gallery, from gallery to home or to contact. So it's a more like a free traffic light example. Okay, so we have the state. We need to set the state. So where exactly should I set the state? Around line 28. Okay. So right here, like. So set path name. And what should I'm using the comment now so that but what will be the code here? So set path name, and what value should I pass? What? Okay, we have two ideas. Like, one is to set the path name on line 29. We still need to figure out what value were you thinking of passing here? So the initial state should probably be the home page. Yeah, that's a good idea. And there's another idea. We should set the path name on the click. So which one should we use on the click? So when we're actually switching, transitioning from one state to another is when we click the navigation, right? So the state should be changed in the on click. So let's update the path name to the actual state that we. So we're doing two things in here, as you can see. We're updating the URL without reloading, that's one thing, and we're also updating the state of our React app. So two different things. It's one has like one purpose to update the URL address bar, the other to change the state. So let me see if it works. First of all, I see that everything changes accordingly, the URL, nothing breaks.
Put it root to everyone in the code.
So, sorry, what?
You set the path name to root to all of the buttons.
Correct, correct. Thank you. And let's display also the current state just as a visual debugger or current path name. Thank you. So, contact, URL changes, state changes. Perfect. Now our URL, as you can see, is in sync with our state. They're not the same thing, but you can see that as our state changes, also does our URL. Okay. So what's the next step? How can we conditionally render the 3 pages now? That shouldn't be too difficult at this point. We're doing it on our own. This is like DIY router, just to understand how these things work. So before using a library, it's better, I think, to know how they work and how they. When a state changes, for example, when the state of the app component gets changed, updated, the app component will re-render. And we will see something different in the page. For example, we will see contact in here.
Okay. If we're putting an ID on the button, for instance, and it was the ID of the button is button 1 to go to homepage, if it's button 2 to go to gallery.
And how can we go to page 1 or like home or gallery or contact? How can we display just home or just gallery or just contact? So yeah, Mary suggests that we do if path name is this, then render home. If path is gallery, render gallery. And if path is contact, render the contact component instead all of them. So that is the state that always contains the selected page. Okay, can we use that to some way conditionally render something? I mean, the logic that Mary suggests here sounds like good enough for us. Like, we know that the path name can either be / gallery or contact. It's like the traffic light, it's not all of them. So we know that path name holds the current or preferred page. We just need a way to convert this, like this description, this thought, into code. So if path name is equal to this, then render home. So we have to use our React syntax that we learned to turn this statement into an actual code statement or expression in this case. So first of all, how can we use an if statement inside JSX? The ternary operator is an if else. The if, how do we, what's the if inside JSX? The end operator. Remember, if in JSX is if else is ternary. Okay, so these are the rules. If you want to use an if statement, use the end operator. If you want to use a ternary operator, okay. And so the syntax is like have some value, and then this will be displayed if the condition is true, and then if the condition is false, you won't display them. Okay, so this is the if. This is how we turn this statement into an actual code. So first you think more abstractly, what do I want to do? And then you try to think of how can I convert this into code. So this is the if statement into React. Okay, so at least we don't see all pages at once. So how can we go from home to contact to gallery? So path name.
Is strictly
Mhm.
sports,
Mhm.
that it's home. If I or slash news,
Mhm.
so we can go to next step by step, or we combine them.
This one. Okay, what should I write in here? Like you can follow your logic, like the thing you described here. Let's send this into code. So in here, mhm. And the same thing here, like the same pattern. Let's see. Let's also check the URL. So we just built our own first router in React. That's what the router does. Change the URL, keep some state to know which page we're currently selecting, and then conditionally render either like the whole page or a part of the page that changes over time. Usually we have like a part that stays the same, like the navigation and the footer, and the middle part is the one that stays like different. So we have like a footer, and then it's just the main page. So that's the router without using any library. Now, there are libraries. The one that I want you to explore is called React Router DOM, which is, of course, a lot more complicated than this, but this is what we normally use in React. So there's a library that does a lot of things. We just did some very simple experiments just to understand what the need is, what the requirement is for a single page application, and how we can implement. Now, there's one last thing I want you to show that it's tricky and we haven't covered here. So if I open this up, now it seems to be working really, really fine, okay? Now here's what happens. What if I bookmark this page and I close my computer and I open up my computer and I open it up again? Or what if I copy this and I send it to a friend? Or maybe I copy this and I open it up in a new tab. So let me place the contact. You will see there's home happening. So there's a problem here. So the problem happens because if I copy the slash contact here, my application will run what we call the initial render. We'll go through the code and we'll run this code for the first time, right? Whenever we reload the page, everything runs from scratch. It's just the initial loading. Now, when we load this, we set the initial state to slash. So even though we can copy and paste slash contact, slash gallery, this will always be slash, and this will always lead to displaying the home page. So the quick fix for that is to actually set the initial state not based on this hard-coded value, but what we see in the URL. So grab the path name from the URL and set the initial path to that instead of always the home. Because if we see like gallery, initially we should display the gallery, not the home. So in order to grab that URL and grab the path name and use that as the initial state, not the state that we set afterwards on the subsequent re-renders, but that's the initial state, we have another API which is called location path name. So just with a simple command, we can grab the path name, the part after the domain. So if I go to contact and I say location path name, I will see slash contact. When I go to home, location path name will be slash, back to contact, a dynamic value. As you can see, it automatically changes whenever I try to access it. And you probably don't see the URL, but now that I click this, this turns into contact, gallery, and so forth. So I dynamically grab the path name, and this is how I can set the initial state. So the first time the page renders, the app paint, it will grab the path name from the URL, not the hard-coded slash. So now, if I'm correct, if I grab this and I paste it here, I should be seeing contact. Everything works as expected. If I grab the contact and I open it up in a new browser, I will be going to contact, and then if I just remove this and place this here as a slash, I will be seeing home. So with this last part, we just got our first React router without having to use a magic box like a library before understanding how this works. Now, if this works well for you, you can use this. You don't have to immediately go and search for a library. It's going to be best for you to play around and build and improve your own router. But for real production applications, we have a lot of needs. Like, for example, practice how to deal with unknown path names, aka 404. So that's a challenge for you. What happens if I place in here something that doesn't exist, like blah, blah? I see nothing. I should supposed to see 404, right? I mean, it's good that I see something, but I should be expected to see something like 404, page not found, okay? So that's a challenge for you. I suggest that you stick with this simple setup, play around, implement the 404, add some more pages, see whether you can find some other requirement, and probably missing a lot of things that we tend to find when we go into a multi-page application. I would say split your application in different pages, in different files, implement the 404. Then next can be another requirement that we get to see a lot is when we go in some pages and we have something, a URL like products, we get to see this format. We get to see let me put this in here. So let's say advanced routes. So we get to see something like products 101 slash products 102 and slash products 103. So we get the same path name, but by supplying a special ID, we get to display product A, product B, product C, or product with ID 101, 102, 103. Or maybe we have a path that says country maps, and we pass Greece, country maps, Turkey, and so forth. So we go to slash country maps, and then we display the map of Greece if we have slash Greece after that, and slash Turkey if we have Turkey, and so forth and so forth. So that's another thing that we get to see and use a lot. I hope this was relatively easy, or at least easier than the whole closure use state concept. Play around, build things, improve the code, and then we will move on gradually to install and use this React Router DOM library. But for now, just play around with this simple setup, just to understand how these magic black boxes, these libraries work under the hood. It's just an advanced version of what we built at this point. Yeah. So idea, maybe use a switch statement somewhere.
A good way to start, say.
Yeah.
While they start.
Remember, yeah, that's I'm putting here. So a switch is a statement, so you cannot use it inside JSX. You have to move it in JS. So use it somewhere and replace the code below with just one expression. Basically, this is what the libraries do. They provide some better way to do this constant if. So they provide a better way. You do go and play around. There are so many ways to solve this. So feel free to play around and come up with some nice solutions that work. But there's plenty of improvement that can be done here. So this was just like a very basic overview of how routing works, and then we'll get into more advanced patterns.